Hey, welcome back to part 2 of the Princeton Reverb clone Tremendous Reverb build. And in this section here, we're going to be looking a little closer at how I do the circuit board and methods that I use. And so stay tuned. All right, so here's the beginning of the turret board. We kind of went through a little bit how to wrap the terminals in the last video on part 1, towards the end of part 1, and this board is now completed as far as the grounding straps go. I'll give you a couple close-ups there. Things are wrapped around the post, soldered up. Like I was saying in the part 1, that I fill in the gaps there. It's not necessary as long as you're soldered on each terminal. I just happen to do it that way because I don't have any real reason other than I just think it's nice and solid. I've never been one for soldering any kind of gap or a hole, let's say in a tube socket, and leaving a gap. I always fill the gap. And so that's where we got started. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to start marking the holes where I'm going to drill for my lead wires to run through. And we'll show you more about that here in a bit. Okay, so I've marked my board here. I don't know if you can see it in the camera or not, but I've taken a black Sharpie and I've marked all the places where I know that I'm going to have a lead wire connect to a turret. And now I'm going to come along. I've already done one hole, and you know, the size of your bit's going to of course matter on what size wire you're using, and so you can measure that out accordingly. But I'm just going to go along here and drill some holes, and just nice and slow. I don't get too far away from the turret, but I also don't get too close. About quarter of an inch maybe. And that's what we have. So I'm going to go ahead and knock the rest of this board out, and then all the holes are drilled, nice and clean, not too big. Now one last step as I do is I take another bit that's a little bit bigger, and you can see if you turn the board over, for every place you drill, it's going to have like a little bird there. So just by hand, no machines, just take it in there, give a little spin like that, and knock off those edges. So you say, well, why do that, Mike? Well, if you have some sharp edges there, then what could happen is those sharp edges could maybe tear the insulation on the wire and cause you a weak place, or even some circumstances maybe it's just short, and those are sure hard to track down if you end up with one. So this whole process, some people say, well, what in the heck do you drill those holes for? Is that necessary? Answer is no, it's not necessary at all. It's just the way that I do it. I think it's cleaner. I like how it lays the wires down on the board, and it's an extra 10 minutes on the build to do this. It doesn't take much time at all, and I think for me at least, it's worth doing. So anyway, I'll go through and finish these guys up, and then we'll move on. I wanted to mention real quick, is we were just going through the back with the drill, and we were by hand, we were going and kind of deburring all the holes. I didn't mention, but yeah, you want to do the front as well. That might even be more important than the back. Again, none of these things are necessary, but since this is a scratch build, not a kit, this is a way that I choose to do it. For all you new guys, which is really what this video is intended for, a kit is certainly not a bad way to start, and I think probably you should start off with building a kit. And then kind of as you get your feet wet in this stuff and you move on, which you probably will, scratch building is certainly my preferred method, because I don't do everything exactly like, let's say, you know, a fender layout or schematic. I do change some things that I think improve the amp. So anyway, we're going to go next. We're going to go through, how do you get the wire on there? Do you wrap it first? Do you stick it through? How do you do it? I'll show you. All right, so I'm going to prep the wire here to go to start doing the lead wires on the board. I do it out of the amp. I do it before this thing goes in the amp. I do it before any components get your resistors, capacitors, and such get soldered to this board. I think it's the way to go. A lot of other builders feel the same way. There's certainly no hard and fast rules, but again, this video is about showing you the way that that Mike does it. Okay, so what I have here is I have a piece of Teflon wire, and I usually use a different kind of stripper. I've got these guys here. As a matter of fact, I think I got these at Lowe's or something. They work pretty good. Expect to use a razor blade on these guys once in a while as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come along and I'm going to strip off a little bit on the end. I'm going to grab my trusty Harbor Freight pick tool. I'm going to make a circle in this guy where it looks about like so. Okay, now you could just take this guy and solder it on here and then take it and run the other end through the hole, pull it down. I've tried that. I don't like it too much. I think the solder sometimes will wick up inside this wire and it'll make it stiff at the base here. And I've actually torn the wire trying to do it that way, so trial and error. So what I'll do is I'll take the wire, I'll grab my little needle nose, which I use a lot, and I'll grab about like so here. Okay, and then I just take it and I give it a 90-degree bend, kind of pull it out straight. So this is what I start with, something just like this. Okay, now I take the board and I insert the wire through the hole, and there we go. And now I can take this guy, wrap it around the turret, just like so. Sometimes I'll bend the wire forward a little bit to hold it. And now it's in place. It's going to hold it. It's not going to slip when I solder it. So let me go ahead and do that. See if I can tilt the camera down just a hair here so you can see this. I'm going to start with a clean solder tip. Put a little solder on the end here. Oh, I guess I have to turn my soldering iron on first. Okay. All right, we've got a heated up soldering iron now, so let's get back to this. Clean your tip off. I usually start with a little bit on the tip. And we will stick it here on the turret and the wire. Preheat everything. Add some solder. Freeze frame. Let it cure. And then come back with your nippers and clean it off. Let me grab mine here. And ta-da! There you go. All right. That's what people say. Well, Mike, how do you choose the color of your wires? Well, I don't know. That's kind of up to you. I usually always use black for ground, and I use red for anything that's high voltage, any of your plates on your tubes, stuff like that. Maybe some of the screens I'll use one color. I usually use green for my negative feedback, red for the bias tap, or sometimes I'll use, you know, it just depends on what I have a lot of. I seem to use a lot of yellow wire like Fender did. And so it's kind of up to you, but I would say whatever you pick, just pick a theme and just kind of stay with it, at least on the one build that you're doing, and that way you kind of keep everything straight. All right, so I'm going to go, well, the one last thing I will say is don't get chintzy on your wire. Use plenty of long leads, okay? There's nothing worse than wiring this board up, getting everything on there, setting it in the chassis, get ready to start connecting to the tubes, and you're short. Then you got to tear the thing out of there and go through it again. So make the wires, you know, extra long so you got plenty to work with. Again, this Teflon wire, I use these kind of side strippers here. They seem to work pretty good. You can use a razor blade, which I have done. The normal strippers that you use to pull wire with, you'll find that those will fail on these guys. They're great for PVC and, you know, for your transformer wires and stuff, but they don't work very well on the Teflon stuff. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started here, and we'll check back in here in a minute when I get a few more wires. One thing I want to mention after I've done a few wires here that occurred to me is, guys, keep your wire wrapped around the post the same direction on the whole board, like the downside. Anything wire that's going down, I wrap it around the left side going right. I don't know if you can see that or not. Okay. And then the up, I mean, kind of keep them uniform. You went to all the trouble to drill these holes and to make this thing all super neat and everything, and don't get them backwards. That'll look bad. Yes, your amp will still work, but hey, you went to all this trouble, you may as well give it 100%, right? So just a quick note there. Okay, quick little update here. Start getting a few things populated. You'll notice here in this area that I don't have the caps near yet. That's going to be these real nice Jupiters that I like the sound of pretty well. And those guys are going to go in there, but I'm going to kind of do them at the end because they're a little different to deal with. And they get in my way a little bit. But if I can give you some close-ups here. And that's kind of the way that I get it done. So you might ask, well, why you got carbon comp in some places and more modern, you know, fireproofs in other places, and, you know, metal film and so on and so forth. Well, any place there's a plate load resistor, I already know those guys sometimes can get fussy on it when the carbon comps, so I go ahead and use the more modern stuff there. But I do like the way the carbon comps sound, so this is kind of a happy medium for me.